The French Revolution occurred because of many events due to the bad choices made by the monarchy. The French Revolution basically happened because its economy was terrible. The poor people were suffering. The king didn't try to solve the problem. And with new ideas of the Enlightenment, the people started asking questions like, why do we only pay taxes? Why do we work the most and have nothing to eat? These were some of the reasons why the revolution even started. King Louis XIV was involved in the French and in the war against Britain, and in the 7 Years of War against Frederick II of Prussia and Britain. France lost the 7 Years of War and lost a lot of land because of it. Another event that affected France's financial situation was the American Revolution, in which France supported the Americans all the way through. France supported the American Revolution because they wanted to get revenge against Britain by sending 200 million livres, enough money to feed and house 7 million French citizens for a year. France could not afford this kind of spending. King Louis XVI built a giant palace called Versailles, which was a testament to unchecked spending with vast amounts of gold decorating the interior. Estimates suggest that over 7 to 10% of the national treasury was spent on the palace. Little issues like the monarch corruption affected France's economy. Another factor was Marie Antoinette, who would spend excessively on her hairstyles and dining.
The French Revolution occurred because of a combination of events. The French government consisted of 3 states. The first state, which was the clergy, it consisted of 0.5% of the people and owned 10% of all the land. The second state, or the nobility, consisted of 1.5% of the population and owned 25% of all the land. And last, the third state, which consisted of everybody else. They were the 98% of the population, but only owned the 65% of the land. The third state was the largest and poorest. One of the reasons the people revolted was because the third state was the only one of the 3 states to get taxed. To make things worse, each of the states had only one vote in the States General and National Assembly. On November 2, 1789, the government seized and sold off church lands. By this point, the clergy political power had been diminished. Bishops and priests were to be elected by the people instead of being appointed by the Pope or other church officials. In return, the state would pay the salaries of the bishops and priests. In 1791, the government set up a limited monarchy. The people with the real power were the legislative assembly. Only men over 25 who had a certain amount of taxes could vote. This meant that you had to be relatively wealthy to vote. There was still political resistance from the king and his court, who opposed political reforms. In September 1792, the newly elected National Convention started meeting. Most of them had gotten their political experience from the revolution. 2/3 of them were under the age of 45. In 21 of September 1792, the monarchy was abolished in France, and the first French Republic was created. The result of this was that factions were created too. The 2 main factions were called the Girondins
toujours de l'audace, que la patrie est sauvée. Boldness, more boldness, forever boldness.
Both were radical groups who belonged to the network of national political groups called the Jacobins. The Girondins were a Republican party that was in favor of maintaining the king. They were later executed because of their beliefs in the Reign of Terror by the Montagnards. The Montagnards were the opponents of more moderate Girondins. The National Convention in the fall of 1792, composed of deputies elected from Paris and other cities. Montagnards depended on the support of the petty bourgeoisie and the sans-culottes, extremely radical revolutionaries, initially from the poorest classes of Paris. On January 21, 1793, Louis XVI was guillotined in the palace of the Revolution. The Congress of Vienna made an effort to suppress the new republic. The War of the First Coalition was the first major effort of multiple European monarchies to contain the revolution. In response, the Committee of Public Safety had 12 members at first, but then Robespierre virtually took over and made it a tyranny. It was formed by an administrative body to supervise and expedite the work of the executive bodies of the convention and of the government and ministers appointed by the convention. It was given powers over military, judicial, and legislative efforts. As the committee tried to meet the dangers of a coalition of European nations and counter revolutionary forces with the country, it became more and more powerful. It was in the War of the First Coalition where Napoleon defeated the coalition and saved the First Republic of France. The Committee of Public Safety relied on the military so much that it led the way to Napoleon to seize power. He was a military genius that turned France into an empire, but made some positive changes. He made the Code Napoleon. It states that all the people were created equal before the law. It also states that there were no longer any special privileges for nobles, churchmen, or rich people. Feudal rights were ended. Trial by jury was guaranteed. Religious freedom was guaranteed. Parents were given powers over their children. Wives were not allowed to sell or give away property. A wife could own property with her husband's consent in writing. Fathers were allowed to imprison their children for any time up to a month. Napoleon ordered the buildings of new roads, canals, and bridges. Huge amounts of money were invested in improving the image of France's capital, Paris. Older buildings were improved, and new buildings were put up. A better network of roads was planned for Paris. And several members of the revolution and to Napoleon himself were elected. Done.
The French Revolution was a time of liberty, equality, and fraternity. But for the women of France, however, these ideas were extremely ambiguous. Gender roles played an important part during the French Revolution. Women participated in virtually every aspect of the French Revolution. After the fall of the Bastille on July 14, 1789, politics started becoming the order of the day. This sparked interest in women to take part in politics, so they began to attend meetings or political clubs. Some women aimed for higher goals and started making a group called Social Circle, which launched a campaign for women's rights. The French Revolution did not lead to a recognition of women's rights, and this prompted de Gauche to publish Declaration of Rights of Women and Citizen in early 1791. Although they tried, women never gained full political rights during the revolution. Women failed to achieve political freedom. However, they did gain moral identity and political constitution through the revolution. New representations of women emerges, and women were no longer seen as lesser or weaker than men, so women became credited for their works. As for men, however, men were pushed into war. They were either drafted, put in prison, or some simply volunteered.
After the revolution, Napoleon, who came into power, got rid of the aristocratic power, opening up economic and social opportunities to many men who had been denied the right to for hundreds of years. During the Napoleonic era, production of armament and other military supplies, fortifications, and the general channeling of the society towards the establishment and maintenance of massed armies temporarily increased economic activity after several years of revolution.
The French Catholic Church, known as the Gallican Church, recognized the authority of the Pope as head of the Roman Catholic Church, but had negotiated certain liberties that privileged the authority of the French monarch. France's population of 28 million was almost entirely Catholic. Being French effectively meant being Catholic. Yet, by 1794, France's churches and religious orders were closed down and religious worship suppressed. On the eve of the revolution, the French state was on the verge of bankruptcy. Repeated attempts at financial reform had floundered, but the revolution opened the way for a new approach that from the beginning involved the church. On November 2nd, 1789, France's new National Assembly passed a decree that placed all the church property at the hands of the nation. Any priest that continued to practice, whether constitutional or refractory, now faced arrest and deportation. On October 1793, public worship was forbidden. Over the next few months, all visible signs of Christianity were removed. After the revolution, the Directory instead witnessed a religious revival in which Catholic men, and especially women, played an important role in reestablishing the faith around the wreckage left by the revolution. Any new regime will have to acknowledge this revival, and if it wanted to ensure the loyalty of France's Catholics, make a place for a church that could bridge.
The French Revolution changed art and music in France. Many artists used Romanticism styles and neoclassic styles of art. Jacques Louis David and Jean-Henri Fragonard were some of the painters during the Revolution. The Herati and the Death of Marat, both paintings by David, were interpreted by the people as a call to revolt. The neoclassic style was used by David in his portrait of Madame Recamier.
Sculptures played a vital role during the French Revolution. During this period of time, many sculptures were destroyed. An example of a sculpture destroyed was the sculpture of Escrochon of Louis XVI. It was destroyed during the French Revolution to show that they had finally revolted. Sculptures were used to inspire subjects for religion or political views. Sculptures were brought to France to create revolutionary figures. Many sculptures were destroyed during the revolution by angry mobs or riots. After the French Revolution, Napoleon started rebuilding France, which was known as the Napoleonic era.
The guillotine was one of the new weapons or technology that the French Revolution created. It was a weapon to cut the individual's heads for people to see how they suffer, so that people won't commit the same crimes or violate the laws that the government had created.
They haven't seen anything yet, Bonaparte told one of his generals. In our time, no one has the slightest conception of what is great. It is up to me to give them an example.